flirted shamelessly at my cousin's wedding. His revenge days later shocked me. You'll never know how it feels until it has happened to you. That saying is true, and I know that now more than ever because I'm bearing a huge grunt of the one thing I never thought would happen to me right now. That's why I'm here, to ask for some sort of advice because of how helpless I feel. Hello, Reddits. My name is Sarah, and I'm 25 years old. I'm a photographer and have been for about 8 years now. It was through photography that I met Steve, my boyfriend. Steve and I have been together for 4 years, and honestly, Steve has been one of the best gifts in my life. He has been my strongest supporter over the years, pushing me beyond my limits and helping me succeed more than I ever expected. But now I think I've done the most horrible thing to my favorite person. I didn't know that he was watching me. I thought that I had everything under control. I thought I could do those things and get away with them, but now I realize that you can never get away with things like this. They just end up coming back to you and hurting you in the most horrible way, like this one has. Steve and I met through my job, as I mentioned earlier. Steve is the CEO of his father's company, a fashion and cosmetics company. They were preparing to release a new set of cosmetics, and their models had been asked to use these products while I took pictures showcasing their effects. Technically, I wasn't the one originally contracted for the job. It had been a friend of mine turned boss, but he had other projects and had to work exclusively on them, so he handed the job over to me instead. Steve and I had to work closely together because, well, Steve is Steve. He hated anything less than perfection, especially at work. He was efficient, hardworking, and never delegated his duties just because he was the CEO. He was very satisfied with my work and offered me an exclusive contract as their photographer for the season. I was really happy because it was the first time I was getting that kind of job offer. I knew I wasn't as good as my friend John in photography, so it meant a lot to me when Steve chose to continue working with me. Steve was a really busy person, and for a whole year, we worked together, but not closely anymore. I barely got to see him because of how occupied he always was, but I knew he was the one who usually approved the pictures I took before they were used for advertisements or social media marketing. To be honest, I liked Steve right from the beginning. He was everything I would want in a man. Normally, I'm a very outgoing and bubbly person, and whenever I liked a guy, I didn't wait for them to come to me. I went to them, like I did with all my exes. Well, they were just 2, but still. However, it was different with Steve. He was my boss, and I didn't want to risk approaching him, getting rejected, and then having him terminate my contract because he felt I was mixing business with pleasure or being unprofessional. So I watched him from afar for a long time. But patience really is a virtue, because after waiting for so long and wishing for it, Steve finally approached me. It started as just having lunch together, then dinner. Nothing too serious or promising, but all had the same effect on me. Giddiness. Eventually, he finally asked me out on a proper date, which I accepted, of course. From then on, Steve and I started meeting more frequently outside work. Our discussions, which had mostly been about work, shifted to other things like interests, relationships, and goals. Surprisingly, Steve and I had similar goals, so it was pretty easy to relate to each other. We had a really steady rapport, and whenever we talked, it felt like the conversation shouldn't end. There was also the undeniable chemistry between us. I was very much sexually attracted to Steve, and I was sure he was to me as well. Everything between us shifted, and before the month was over, we were already dating. Dating Steve, I won't lie, had been one of the best decisions I ever made. He was simply everything I wanted. Growing up, I always wished for a man as romantic and loving as my dad. When I finally got together with Steve, it felt like a dream come true. I love Steve so much, and I still do. But now I see that you can't claim to love someone as much as I do, and still hurt them the way I have. Our first year together was everything I dreamed of and more. Although I cannot say the same for the second year. I had a problem. A huge one. And I couldn't tell Steve because of how respectable he is. I was scared to tell him because I knew he would frown upon it, and it was a big part of my dirty past that I had never told anyone about. I didn't want him to stop looking at me the way he always did, with love and adoration in his eyes. I wanted him to keep seeing me as the me he knew. Let me just brief it here without going into too much detail. You see, before I met Steve, my ex-boyfriend, whom I dated for about 2 years, indulged me in some very bad habits. I didn't realize at the time that I was getting addicted to them. It wasn't alcohol, drugs, or anything illegal like you might think. It was actually sex. Yes. The only reason I stayed with my ex-boyfriend for that long, despite the fact that he was a manipulator, a liar, and a cheat, was because he was really good at it. I even moved in with him at some point in our relationship just so I could have sex whenever I wanted. He taught me things that I knew. If I ever suggested them to Steve to spice up our sex life, he might never have agreed. Well, maybe I should have tried suggesting them. Maybe he wouldn't have rejected the ideas, but I never tried. I took an alternative route, and now I'm left with a whole lot of regrets. Sex with Steve was actually okay too. But it wasn't the same. It didn't feel the same. At the end of everything, I ended up feeling like I was only sexually stimulated and aroused instead of fully satisfied. But I loved him, so I thought I could live with that. I didn't want to cheat on him or anything. I felt like I could sexually starve myself if it meant being with Steve. But that promise made to myself didn't last very long. It didn't take very long for me to start feeling really frustrated sexually. Steve gave me everything I wanted. He was perfect in every other aspect except for that part, and I endured it successfully for the first year. The second year, I cheated for the first time with a random stranger. It wasn't planned or anything like that. I had not even meant for it to happen. I had gone to a club with my friends, and we drank and danced until our feet hurt, and the whole room felt like it was spinning anti-clockwise. He had approached me then on the dance floor and started to dance with me. The music changed quickly into a slow, sensual song, allowing us to move in rhythm, our sweaty bodies grinding against each other. He was a great dancer, and when the music finally stopped and changed into a fast beat, I was breathing heavily. When he suggested leaving the dance floor and going somewhere private, I had not objected. Somewhere private had been the small restroom inside the club, and we needed no words between us before we got down and dirty. When we were done, I picked up my skirt, adjusted my top, and instead of leaving, I went back to my friends. He came back to the club too, but we didn't talk to each other again. He was probably on the hunt for another girl to slam against the bathroom sink. My friends asked me what happened between us, and I lied to them. I told them that we went out for some fresh air after the rigorous dancing, and when I told him I had a boyfriend, he started behaving like a jerk, so I walked away. They believed me and even insulted him while making jokes about his weird-shaped head, which I was only noticing after just having sex with him. I felt really guilty for cheating on Steve, but I couldn't help feeling a little excited about my sexual adventure. But I still felt really bad, so I promised myself that I wouldn't cheat on Steve again. Once was enough, and luckily, he didn't even suspect or find out about it. But then, once you don't get caught doing something, you'll probably try it again, won't you? Well, I didn't cheat on Steve again until our 4th year of being together. By that time, I was already living with Steve. Over time, my rent expired, and Steve had suggested moving into his house instead of renewing my rent, and I was glad. Because it made things really easy for me. He drove me to and from work, and he had a chef who cooked our meals. I didn't have to do anything around the house, just lazing around on days I had nothing to do. The second time I cheated on Steve was really terrible. It wasn't with someone far. It was with someone that Steve knew very well, and the person worked for him closely, in fact. Joe, Steve's chef. Actually, Steve's chef was a middle-aged woman who had a family of her own, so she didn't stay permanently. But she quit her job eventually because her child apparently needed her. I didn't understand that excuse, but Steve had been kind enough to offer to keep her job open until she was ready to come back. He only employed a temporary chef to cook for us while she was gone. I was only happy to see her go, though. Even though I knew that Steve was never interested in his chef, especially sexually, I was still paranoid. We argued about firing her several times, but Steve had been adamant about her staying. So when she left, I was relieved and happy. The new chef was male. All male, in fact. I was surprised when he appeared at the house one Saturday morning and introduced himself as the new chef, looking more like a personal trainer. He was very ripped, and it was obvious even through his clothes. I tried as much as possible to ignore him at first. I didn't want any trouble, and I had made a promise the first time I cheated, but promises are meant to be broken. It works that way literally all the time. I did keep my promise of staying away from Joe for the first month after he came, but it was difficult staying away when I strangely felt very sexually attracted to my boyfriend's chef. We didn't even talk. I purposely left things that way between us at first so that I didn't get tempted to sin, but eventually it just happened. Joe and I started getting really close. I thought perhaps knowing him and his faults would help me get over my sexual attraction to him, but if anything, it only increased. It didn't help matters that he was also clearly sexually attracted to me, and he made no attempt to deny it. And then it happened. Steve had to travel out of town for a week. He had a family function to attend, and he wanted to take me along, but I had work. So I couldn't go with him, which meant I was stuck in the house with Joe. At first, I tried really hard to reduce the chances of us both being in the house all day. I would close from work late on purpose or delay a shoot until evening, so I didn't have to go home until it was too late to eat. One morning, when I was leaving the house early, Joe caught up to me. He clearly woke up early just so he could catch me before I left. He asked if he should make me dinner because he was apparently throwing away the food he made for me in the evenings. I felt really bad and started coming home earlier so I could eat the food he prepared, but that didn't help matters at all. I was still very much sexually attracted to him, so much so that I was beginning to lose my mind. My concentration at work was faltering, so I made up my mind to sleep with him just once, just to get him off my mind. It wasn't hard to seduce Joe. I didn't even need to. And before we both could process what was happening, we were sleeping with each other. It happened on the last day before Steve was supposed to arrive. I was done with my shoots, so I had nothing to do. No excuse for work to leave the house, so I stayed in the house with Joe. Steve had called me that morning to tell me he was coming the next day and that he missed me. I went to the kitchen to get a drink because I was thirsty and had seen Joe preparing lunch. I stayed with him and helped him. We even ate together in the kitchen. Everything was pretty normal until somehow, I don't know how, but it just happened. One minute we were laughing at a silly joke together, and the next we were kissing right there in the kitchen. Everything happened so fast. By the end of it, I couldn't say a word and just sat on the cushion where we had just... I was breathing really heavily. Joe must have thought I was panicking because of what had happened between us. He sat there after putting his uniform back on and was trying to apologize, but I wasn't even hearing him. All I could think of was how good the sex had been. I was breathing heavily not because I was panicking or feeling guilt, but because of how breathless the short encounter had left me. Eventually, Joe left me when he realized that I wouldn't say anything. That night, I lay in bed just thinking about the experience again and again until I finally fell asleep. Steve arrived earlier than expected the next morning to surprise me with loads of gifts he had bought. It was then I knew that I had lost it. I looked into Steve's eyes, and instead of feeling guilty like I had with the stranger I slept with, I felt rather confident and determined to sleep with Joe again. It didn't help matters that when Steve and I eventually had sex that evening, he was so tired he almost fell asleep on me. I sneaked off that night to Joe's room, and we had sex again for the second time that day. I couldn't help myself. From that day, I was so addicted to Joe that I just couldn't stop. I didn't think to stop. I managed to convince myself that it was just sex, and so long as Steve didn't find out, nothing else mattered. I was just relieving myself of my sexual frustration and playing Steve's perfect girlfriend. It was a win-win situation. Or so I thought. Joe and I kept at it. I started staying back at home more on days I didn't have to work early, just so I could have time with Joe. I tried not to make things between us obvious, especially when Steve was around. I thought that Steve didn't suspect anything and that there was nothing to worry about. Little did I know that I was only digging myself a big grave. I should have known from the way Steve's behavior suddenly changed towards me. He would refuse to talk to me at work, and when we got home, he would stick to his laptop and work until late. Most times, he fell asleep in his study. He didn't even come to sleep with me in the room. I shrugged it off. There was no way he would suspect me. I was very careful. I thought his behavior had something to do with work. But then again, I worked with him, and I knew that everything was fine with work. I thought maybe Steve was trying to come up with better strategies to boost sales, so I still ignored it. I ignored the way he stopped eating at home and how he would spend days traveling when there was no need to. I didn't mind it. It gave me more time with Joe, so I thought of it all as normal. Not until the worst had happened. The most horrible thing, really. My favorite cousin Stella called me and invited me to her wedding. I was really happy for her, and I told Steve about it. He had opted out of going, but I told him Stella insisted that he be there. We had to travel out of town for the wedding because Stella apparently wanted her fairy tale wedding to be in another state entirely. We were supposed to be there for the whole weekend. When I got there, I immediately got busy trying to help Stella prepare for the wedding. She had made comments about how Steve and I weren't married yet, even though we had the longest relationship. I was hurt by what she said, but it was the truth. Stella and her husband dated for just a year before he proposed to her. I started to feel really angry and irritated with Steve, particularly because he was just really ignoring me. Even during the wedding, he didn't dance with me or anything. He just sat there working on his phone. It pissed me off so much, and I did something just to piss him off, to get him to react and be jealous. I started to flirt. Flirt really hard. There was this guy at the party that my cousin had introduced to me as her friend from college. He was the perfect man to use to make a man like Steve jealous. And he was obviously interested in me, so I made my worst decision yet. I laughed at his crude jokes, touched his shoulder slightly, and even danced with him when he asked. When he put his hand around my waist as the best man raised a toast, I didn't complain. When he clicked his glass of champagne with mine with a meaningful look in his eyes, I gave him a smile. All I wanted was for Steve to just react so I could feel happy. I ignored the feeling of dread in me while letting the guy think of me as his new acquisition. I even ignored the look in Steve's eyes when he continued to watch me. Steve didn't wait until after the wedding was over before he left. He left before the weekend was over, and I felt annoyed by it. So I adamantly stayed back 2 more days instead of going back. I didn't know what Steve had in store for me. When Joe called me, I ignored his call, thinking that he probably was just missing my body. I didn't think anything of his call. But when I got back home, everything felt different. Steve wasn't even at home. He had gone to work, and the house was empty. Like, really empty. Joe wasn't even in the house, and I tried calling him then, but his number wasn't even connecting at all. I got called to work almost immediately after I got home by Steve's legal team, and I was surprised. I didn't know what was wrong, so I went to work. Immediately I stepped into the building. I knew something was off, but I just couldn't place it. Everyone was whispering, staring, and pointing fingers at me, and I got really nervous. I went directly to the conference room for the meeting with the legal team, and I was charged immediately with a breach of contract. I was really shocked because, up until then, I had not done anything worthy of a breach in the contract. But then when they mentioned exactly what it was that I did, I was beyond shocked. 2 months back, I went on a side gig with little pay, almost nothing compared to what I charged for my services. I wasn't even working that day at Steve's company, so I thought it was a win-win situation for me. I got to make a little money and also have fun. To be honest, it was Joe who got me the job and had convinced me to take it. It was his niece's graduation, and he wanted me to help her take nice pictures with the family. I didn't tell Steve about it, and since it wasn't even some big party or anything, I thought no one would find out. But somehow Steve's legal team had found out, and they were suing me for it. I tried to beg them, but they were adamant, and I was really surprised because I was sure they all knew I was with Steve. I tried to see Steve after leaving the meeting with his legal team, but his secretary maintained that he wasn't available, despite his car being parked downstairs. I waited patiently for him to get home so I could lash out. When Steve finally got home and I started to talk angrily at him, he didn't even give an answer or explanation, and it made me even angrier. But then Steve did the oddest thing. He smirked and then brought out his laptop and waved a flash drive at me. I couldn't understand what he was doing or why he was doing that. He didn't even mind that I was pissed at him. He just calmly inserted the flash drive into the laptop like he had all the time in the world. It was a video, and when he played it, it dawned on me exactly what everything was about. It was a video of Joe and me during one of our sexual activities. It was a recent video, just before we left for the wedding, when Joe had been persistent and wanted me to have sex with him before I left for the weekend. I had sneaked out of the room when Steve was deeply asleep and went to Joe's. The video was a bit dark, but it showed my face and Joe's clearly having a go at it. I just stood there, so shocked that I couldn't even move. I just stared at the screen of his laptop and watched my life crumble, piece by piece. It was then that Steve explained he had actually been suspecting both of us and had a CCTV installed to find out the truth. When he confirmed his suspicions, he wanted to have his pound of flesh. He wanted to find a legal reason to dismiss me from work, which was why he took so long in exposing me. An affair was clearly not a legal reason to make me suffer the consequences at work, so he hired someone to do a little digging, and they had found out about my side gig with Joe. Apparently, he also ensured that Joe was fired and would never be able to work as a chef again. He paid people to spread rumors about his affair with his boss's girlfriend. While he spoke, all I could do was stare in shock. I didn't have anything to say or do. I couldn't plead my innocence when there was hard evidence against me. I was panicking. I didn't even know I was crying until my shirt got stained. Steve just stared at me. He wasn't moved by my tears. He just went on and on about how I should never have betrayed him. It was only when he made an attempt to stand up that my body suddenly sprung into action. My frozen body sprang up, and I went on my knees, holding onto his trousers while crying and begging for forgiveness. But Steve just untangled my hands from his trousers and asked me to leave the house. He gave me until the end of the next day to leave. That was the final blow. It felt like leaving his house was the end of everything we had ever shared, and I feel so scared of being totally cut off from Steve's life. I couldn't sleep through that night. I was thinking about it all. The signs were there. I could have easily guessed that he was suspecting me if I had paid any attention. I thought I was wise and that everything was going according to my plans, but I was so wrong. I still tried stupidly to make him more jealous by flirting at my cousin's wedding. He must have waited for the perfect time to execute his revenge by finding all the facts. He traveled the next morning without even telling me anything. I knew about the trip he was going on because he had told me about it weeks before that day. He only packed his bags and told me he expected me gone by the time he came back. He's been gone for 2 days now, and I'm so scared to leave. I really feel terrible for everything I did, and I'm desperate to make amends. If there's any way I can right my wrongs or do something that will make Steve give me a chance again, I will do it. Guys, what can I do? I don't want to lose Steve, and I'm scared of his reaction if he sees me back at his place. But then I cannot leave because I'm scared I will be totally cut off from his life. What do I do? Update. Hello, Reddits. It's been the longest 3 weeks of my life. I didn't think it was possible to suffer this much for what I've done. It's like everything in my life has gone wrong. Totally wrong. I feel like an outcast even in my own parents' home. When they found out what I did, they refused to talk to me since then. Even my favorite cousin, who is actually younger than me, told me when she found out that I behaved badly and didn't deserve to be with Steve. It doesn't help that they're actually right. Ever since I moved out of Steve's house, I've been living in my own hell. When Steve got back from his trip and found me in his house, he was so angry he threw my things out of his door and left me outside on the porch. I stayed until late in the evening, begging Steve to open the door, but he didn't respond. I eventually had to leave when the police came and almost arrested me for trespassing on private property. I stayed with my aunt at first, but she wasn't exactly the happiest person to be with. Even when I was younger, I avoided staying with her because she wasn't very accommodating. The first week of staying with her made everything I was feeling amplified. She complained bitterly about my cries in the night and blamed me for everything that went wrong in her house. It was obvious she didn't want me there any more than I wanted to be there. Steve found out where I was and had my remaining luggage delivered to my aunt's place. I left her house after an uncomfortable week and went to my parents' place. But instead of the comfort and warmth I desperately sought, I got the opposite, and even worse. My mom found every opportunity to throw jabs at me. She constantly reminded me of my married younger cousin and how she never cheated on my dad, not even once. My dad barely says anything to me. He just ignores me, which is even more painful. Nothing breaks my heart as much as losing Steve does. He just totally cut me off like that. I've tried several times to reach out to him and apologize, but he won't even hear me out. He blocked me through every possible means of contact. I'm totally cut off from life too. I can't even work anymore as a photographer, and I have a debt to pay for breaching my contract. News of my firing traveled faster than I expected, and now nearly everyone knows I was fired because I couldn't keep a simple clause in a contract. I feel so broken, sad, and depressed. Ever since everything happened with Joe, he hasn't even reached out to me. It's like he also blames me for ruining his career and has blocked me off. Not that it mattered that he blocked me, I just feel really regretful because he was the one person I sacrificed everything for. No, scratch that. I didn't sacrifice anything for him but my own shame, sanity, and evidently, my entire life for pleasure. Now I'm paying a huge price for it. It feels like a useless reason to have done all that, especially compared to everything I've lost. Even the sexual benefits I was so willing to do anything for no longer appeal to me. Nothing does anymore, and I feel powerless against my situation. I could have done better. I know I could have. But instead, I just found ways to destroy the very thing I built with Steve for years. It's so painful thinking back to all the right decisions I could have made in those situations. I could have just told Steve how I was feeling instead of acting selfish and greedy. It still feels surreal to me, having to live like this broken toy that can never be fixed. I feel so choked up, it's almost insane. It's almost unbelievable how my life is at this moment. I regret everything I did to hurt Steve. He was my favorite person, and I couldn't believe I did all this to hurt him. I guess I don't even have the right to call him my favorite person anymore. You don't hurt the one you claim to love, do you? It's so painful that I'm only just realizing that now. Is there really any way of surviving this? This hellhole that has suddenly become my life. This heartache that never seems to stop. This pain that feels permanently lodged in my chest. Is there really a way? I guess not. Update. Hello, Reddits. This is my last post, and honestly, I just wanted to say that you guys are cruel. The comments you leave on my posts, I see them all, and I cannot say they didn't affect me. They have left a permanent mental imprint on my mind about myself. I came here to seek advice and to know if it was possible to mend the broken trust between Steve and me. I thought that maybe if I shared my part of the story online, I would get some sort of advice. I honestly don't know what I was thinking, believing that you guys would understand me and try to help me. Instead, you made it your duty to let me know exactly what you feel about me and my actions, in not so polite words. Your choice of words and the way you reacted to my post made out of desperation is chilling. My mind has been in a permanent state of disarray, and I almost regret the decision of coming online with my story. You guys made me feel really worthless, which is far worse than I already feel about the whole thing. It doesn't help that everything is literally my fault. I caused it all, and I really regret everything. I cannot blame you guys because I did everything to myself. Sometimes I wish so desperately that all of this is just some bad dream, that I could go to bed at night and wake up to Steve's bare chest in the morning with his arms around me. But then I wake up again to the coldness around the house and the emptiness in my heart. Every day I find new things to regret, and they just keep piling up. It doesn't help that I have no one to vent to. There's no one to support me or even encourage me. I have no friends, and my family has been making extra effort to avoid me, despite the fact that we live together. Then there's the issue of work. No one wants to contact me for any job anymore, so I'm literally out of work and still in huge debt. The payment for the breach of contract has stripped me of every savings I had, and I still had to borrow money to finish the payment requested by Steve's legal team. I'm so alone, and it's almost as choking as my situation itself. I know I'll probably continue living like this, in regrets and pain, knowing that I had a perfect life, but I ruined it with my greed and dissatisfaction. I wish for so many things right now, things I know can never come to pass. Things like a second chance or a redo, but then I know that life doesn't offer second chances or do-overs. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck in this hell of my own making. And honestly, I don't even know how long I will continue to feel this way. Every day I feel much worse than before, and I'm losing my mind slowly. I don't know what the future holds, but I sure as hell am not looking forward to it. I know it promises a lot of pain and heartache. I know I won't have Steve with me. I know that I will still be lonely. I hope you guys don't end up like me. Even if you don't like me much, at least learn from me. I wish I had been wise enough to learn from someone else's mistakes instead of my own. Thanks, and goodbye.